You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. And boy, we have a doozy of a game to talk about a little bit, to break down from last week.
I thought we were doing Colts, so we're not doing Colts?
Oh yeah, exactly. So three weeks in a row now, the Colts have given up 37, 39, 38 points. As you would imagine, they have lost all three of those games. Although
and they shouldn't have.
No, exactly. You're completely right. They should not have. As for this last week's game against the Saints, the 38-27 result drops them to 3-5 on the season. They were winning 17-7. So when I stepped in front of all you last week on the podcast, and I said, you know what, I feel good about this week. I felt pretty good at that time there in the second quarter as the Colts held a 17-7 lead, and Jonathan Taylor had run for 80-something yards in the first quarter.
7 for 82. It's burned in my mind.
In the first quarter there. It's like 27-7. It's like
hey,
those numbers
he's on pace for 300 and whatever. Well, not really.
And then there were some decisions made that changed up some strategies. And anyway, here we are with the Colts losing another game to the Saints. I mean, there's a lot to break down in this. I think the Jonathan Taylor issue is relevant, and I think on the other side of the ball, where they are at cornerback is relevant too. Those are probably the two biggest takeaways I think from this game. That, like, Chap, it wasn't what we saw in the previous two losses, that turnovers put the offense or put the defenses in bad positions and allowed opposing offenses to rack up the points. It was the Saints figured out that they had to pick on one cornerback, and by some strange twist of fate, it's not the 7th round rookie that they're picking on,
or Kenny Moore,
or, well, obviously it's not Kenny Moore. Yeah, you're certainly not him, but it just seems weird that you have a 7th round rookie starting at cornerback, and he's not the guy that the other team is picking on. The Saints just went after Tony Brown over and over and over again, and it yielded points after points.
It's just, again, we talked about this last week. We sat here in June about why isn't there a veteran. I'm not saying go out and pay $10 million for a veteran corner, but get somebody who's played the position. They didn't primarily after Isaiah Rodgers' suspension, because they knew. I mean, they traded Stephon Gilmore, and then they didn't re-sign Brandon Facyson. But the deal with Isaiah Rodgers was a curveball that they really didn't. I don't care what people say. They did not know that was coming. They didn't. But they've done virtually nothing significant, even insignificant, to deal with it. And we talked to Gus Bradley on Tuesday, and you could see his exasperation. He said, "Well, we sort of knew what DJ could do, Darrell Baker, from Cleveland, and before, because he got benched, after 2 games before. So essentially, we wanted to see what Tony Brown could do." That's a discussion you have going into your first preseason game, not your 8th regular season game.
It was if it was exasperating for the defensive coordinator, it's exasperating for the entire fan base out there, Matt, to see it over and over and over again, just the same thing and really nothing being done to change it. And that was just what they had, and the Saints took advantage of it over and over.
Yeah, I mean, I felt bad for Tony Brown, because I also feel like the team set him up to fail a little bit here. That's not his strength, being on the outside. He's been a special teams
2 weeks
guy.
in a row they've done that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's listed usually as the backup nickel guy. So he's supposed to be there if Kenny Moore gets hurt or needs a breather or whatever. They bring him in for a play or two. It's just not his thing, and he's definitely not an outside cornerback. And just seeing him on Rashid Shaheed, who has world-class speed out there, trying to keep up with that guy. I know on the touchdown that Bradley said that Rodney Thomas was supposed to have over-the-top responsibility, so he's supposed to have help on that. But still, you got a guy running past your corner for a 59-yard touchdown.
It's funny. Driving in here today, I passed a couple guys just out having a break outside. I don't know if it's a motor vehicles building over here or whatever it is.
Yep.
And I thought about, let's bring him in and have Dave take the day off, and let's just see how that guy does.
Right.
Because we know what Dave can do. That's not quite the same.
Now, hold on a second.
I know. But to put a guy in an NFL game because you just don't know what he can do. Well, what it told you is they know what the rest of the guys can do. And I just, I kind of thought Gus to say, guys, what do you want me to do? Well, obviously something else. And we just wonder why they don't go with Kenny outside. I didn't think they should, but now they're that hard up outside.
Right.
Go with he and Jalen Jones, and then mix and match at corner with Nick Cross, with Julian Blackman, somebody, because this isn't working. We mentioned the turnovers against the Browns. Yes, they had 4, but they had 3 when it mattered because the one was at the end. But even with that, if they get moderate cornerback play from Darrell Baker, they win. That the last drive doesn't happen. And last week the same thing. And it's like Matt mentioned, putting guys in position to fail. That's what teams are supposed to not do.
Right.
The old Clint Eastwood, a man's got to know his limitations. Well, you don't put a guy out there, and those 2 players have really been under the microscope, but they shouldn't be. I wrote about Monday, as a lot of guys do. This is a Colts issue. It is. And they've not added any corners this week.
Right.
They elevated a guard. Is it Jack Anderson?
I don't know.
That's my point. So I don't know. I kind of expect if there's a corner that starts, I think it's Darrell Baker, because now we know what Tony Brown can do. But I would go the other option and try to mess with nickel and leave Kenny and the rookie out there. And boy, look at what's so frustrating is you look at the season. This team, without a stretch, should be 5-3, and you've got Carolina and New England coming up. And doggone, if you're playing remotely well, look where you are. But look at the quarterbacks they're facing the rest of the season. You've got Joe Burrow, who's unquestionably top 5 right now. He's catching. He's really got it back. After that, the second best quarterback might be C.J. Stroud, or Kenny Pickett. I mean, but that's the point. So it's just frustrating that they've put themselves in this position, and it's frustrating individually that these 2 guys who are primarily special teams players. Tony Brown had played 10 snaps the last 2 years on defense, 1 this year. So it's frustrating.
I think the frustrating part comes that we've seen this script before, just with different scenarios. It's been Chris Ballard has taken risks yearly, and this happens with GMs. Like, you can't have the 53, like the ideal 53, right, and have no questions anywhere. But the areas that we see, that we talk about here on this podcast throughout the summer, that we know, that we can see, and we're not professional front office members. We're members of the media who have some knowledge. We don't have the exact depth of knowledge that Chris Ballard has when it comes to building a football team, but we can see that having Jacob Eason to back up Carson Wentz is probably not a good idea. Even we can see that going into a year with this many young cornerbacks and so few veterans is probably not a good idea. And we can see that the depth on the offensive line in previous years was not up to snuff, and not going in with any veteran backups or any type of veteran to challenge a guy at left tackle last year for the starting job was probably not a good idea. And they have proven time and time again that all these places where Chris Ballard is taking risks have been too risky, have been... There are guys out there, there are corners out there, like you said right now, Chap, that they could go and sign a cornerback right now. They choose not to because, for whatever reason, I don't know. And just the ways that we have predicted that things could go wrong, they have gone wrong.
I don't need to have a background as a movie critic to know when a movie isn't very good.
Right.
I mean, my eyes tell me that. And it's just that the areas that they've taken risks on recently, left tackle, well, you miss on that, and it paralyzes your line.
Everything hurts.
And it did.
Yeah.
And it did. And right guard, yeah, but doggone it, it's right guard. Left tackle, it paralyzes your line. And corner, and one thing that this cornerback issue has done it's overshadowed how non-existent the pass rush has been. The lack of a pass rush the last, month has just exacerbated. It's laid out these corners. Like I think DeForest Buckner today talked about, well, guys have gone with quicker drops and this, that, and the other. Yeah, but other quarterbacks, other defenses get to the guy.
Right.
And so it's just not working. They went into the season with young and experienced corners outside of Kenny and a pass rush that they were hoping or expecting would be better. And the last month or 5 weeks, that hasn't been.
Yeah, I think that's important to bring up, Chap, is the aspect of the pass rush. And you look at last week, you say, oh, DeForest Buckner got a strip sack, so that's good. But, what one play isn't enough?
I think it was 2 hits on Derek Carr.
Yep.
Yeah,
Two.
that was it.
You let him play 7-on-7, he's going to beat you.
Yeah, and he's shown that in the past throughout his career. And that's why the tail of the tape was last week to get pressure on him, to make him uncomfortable. And he was not. He was very comfortable back there. In the pocket, as he has been in the past here at Lucas Oil Stadium, unfortunately, and this time leading the Saints to a victory instead. It was a painful watch. They do need to get some better play on the defensive line, and I'm glad you brought that up, Chap, because I remember just a couple weeks ago, after the first 3 weeks, I was saying, hey, Kwity Paye has a sack in these first 3 games, each of the first 3. He's one of only like 6 or 7 guys to do it, and other guys that names are up there are like Watt, TJ Watt, and
one of the Boses,
and Janelle
probably.
Hunter, and some of those the great pass rushers in the NFL today. Micah Parsons, Kwity Paye is up there with those guys. Well, Kwity Paye hasn't done anything for the past couple weeks of reasonable substance toward getting after the passer.
Yeah, that's because I think he's a very solid edge end. But that's not, first of all, he was a first-round draft pick,
right.
and I think they projected him to be more than. Because remember, he didn't have a ton of sacks at Michigan.
No.
So you're projecting that he would. And again, we've talked to him, and you mentioned when we talked, he's Jabal Sherrod, which is great.
Yeah.
But you need a guy. You need a guy that's going to get the pass rush, and it's just wrong that DeForest Buckner is your pass rush. He's a great player, but you need edge pressure.
Undeniably.
And on top of that, Tyquan Lewis, who's been really good the last couple of years, hasn't been the same guy to this point. I got to believe both. This is the second time he's coming back from what was a patella.
Yeah,
and he may not be back until next year as far as playing. And and you lose Eric Johnson, Grover Stewart. I understand, yes, but where's the edge pass rush?
Yeah, it's not present right now, and having that would help a lot. Like you have these young corners, make it so the quarterback doesn't have the time to let him go 59 yards over the top on you, and like everything works together. It obviously
what was the last play? 51 yards, 3rd and 13.
3rd and 13.
Yeah.
And it would have given you a chance. Now you still had to drive probably 80 yards, and you would have needed a 2-point conversion, but it would have given you a chance. And as soon as that happens, it's game over.
Yeah. How much would you love to have Darius Rush right now? Which is weird. Like the guy that you drafted.
They
in the
must
fifth
have
round
really, really missed on him.
Yep.
And
playing for Pittsburgh now, I believe, is where
is he on the active roster or practice squad?
Active roster with Pittsburgh.
Because they had a chance to bring him back when all this stuff started.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
I think he was on the Chiefs practice squad, at least for some time.
Maybe even when Juju went down. I'm not sure. That's just been like 10 days ago.
Yeah.
But they had a chance to bring him back, and they we saw enough.
We'll try Tony.
What was he? Was he a 5th?
5th round pick. Yeah. There comes a point where like Tony Brown is valuable on special teams. Don't get me wrong, and I think this last week has just put him in the limelight in a bad way. So I want to include that as well. That there's a reason he's on this team, and it's for special teams. But there's a reason that you need more cornerback help right now.
There's a reason he played 10 defensive snaps in
the last
2 years.
2 years, exactly, because he's not valuable on that side.
And unfortunately, the enduring image of Tony Brown for Colts fans is him running after,
exactly
Shaheed
right.
On those long passes.
It's not downing a punt inside the 5-yard line.
Right.
Everybody forgets that. And now it's just him 10 yards behind the wide receiver who's just strolling into the end zone. So you feel for him in that way. because he went out there and he did his best, but he's put in a position where, like, I could go out there and do my best. That's not going to be very helpful.
They're still gonna burn you for a 59-yard touchdown.
Yeah, they'll do much
probably
more.
worse than they burned Tony Brown.
Probably worse. Yes, no doubt about it. So right now, we'll see what they do. Would love to see them try something different. Would love to see them try to put Julian Blackmon in the nickel and bring in Nick Cross, because if you want to get Nick Cross some more snaps at safety, like, this is a way to do it. He's a guy you drafted in the 3rd round. Apparently, you still think pretty highly of him, but he's just not playing at all. So we're in that position right now with the Colts secondary to say that, hey, let's move everyone around, because there's really no one else to put in the position that they should be in.
And that's normally the worst thing to do.
Yeah, you're right.
And I understand that when they didn't want to move Kenny, well, then you're messing with two. It's like the old thing about putting Quentin at left tackle. Well, then you're messing with 2 positions, and you're probably weakening certainly guard.
Right.
But it goes back to the definition of insanity. Quit doing the same thing,
right,
and expecting different results, because it's not working.
No.
And at least you've got quite a bit of track record with Nick Cross. And again, you got some quarterbacks coming up that if these guys throw for 300 yards against you, then somebody's job is in trouble.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the offensive side of the ball, because I brought up the Jonathan Taylor issue. I think we've beaten the cornerback situation to death, at least for this week.
I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. Who knows what?
There's
we do
always
next
another week.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we'll save some meat on the bone for next week, but Jonathan Taylor in the first quarter was absolutely stellar against the Saints, and the Colts get off to a 17-7 lead. As I said, things are looking good.
It's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget 17-7.
Exactly. Yeah. And then just get outscored 28-3 on a big Saints run before they get a little bit later. The Colts do late in the game, so it was puzzling to see the offense do what it did, Chap, after the success it had with Jonathan Taylor early in this game. I mean, Zach Moss had a couple good runs, don't get me wrong, but we've said it before, there's a reason you paid Jonathan Taylor $14 million, because he's a different running back. And if you want to keep pace with a high-powered offense like we saw, or even come back against a high-powered offense, you need to get your best, most explosive players the ball, and Jonathan Taylor was riding the bench for so much of that second half.
He had, 4 carries in the second quarter for 12 yards of my college education serves me. But then second half, he had 1 for 1. First play of the third quarter.
Say it was the first play of the second half, right?
Right.
One touch.
And I will grant them that the third quarter inefficiency contributed to that, because there was, after the 1 yard run, there was a false start, and before you know it, it's 3rd and 14. You don't convert, and then the next series I think they were 3 and outs the next series, and then you had the long drive with Zach Moss. Where he had like 5 carries in a row. One of them was a 41-yarder.
Run, yep.
And then Minshew throws that god-awful interception. But like one thing that Shane Steichen mentioned is tempo. We didn't want to get Moss out of there because we were going tempo on the interception drive. And then he said sometimes they were down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. They were down 2 scores for like 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as the Saints went up 2 scores, the Colts drove for a touchdown. So right. It's just I'm going to say it was a one-off. It was just one of those strange games where you look back and think, man, it was like the Tampa Bay game. Was it in 21 when Wentz dropped back 26 straight times? Mm-hmm. Frank indicated that there were some runs in there, and Wentz said, "Nah, I think I'll throw it." Mm-hmm. But 26 straight, and they closed this game with 19 straight dropbacks.
Yep.
Which, when you've got, yes, JT, but Moss, even Moss, but you showed what how you value Jonathan Taylor with the $42 million extension.
Right.
To not use him more. I understand Moss, but it was just strange. I want to say it was a one-off, but let's see how it is moving forward.
I think this is, at the very least, it's a learning experience for Shane Steichen.
Agreed.
It has to be, because you get in the zone of calling plays, And that might not be something that even crosses your mind. All you're thinking of strategy, and you're thinking of like a scheme, and you're not thinking exactly of personnel at that point.
But that's what your position coach is doing.
Right.
DeAndre Smith needs to say, yeah, we need to get JT more, or somebody.
Yes.
In the 21 game, Quentin Nelson went up to Frank Reich and said, hey, can we
call a straight run?
Can we call a straight run? Forget the RPO stuff.
Right.
He said, JT's hungry, and they went on a long drive with Jonathan Taylor. So one thing that I wrote about, and I have almost resigned myself to the fact, is this is not going to be Jonathan Taylor heavy offense the rest of the way. They've convinced me of it. It's going to be 60-40, the run game. And part of it is when we talked to Irsay after the extension, he said, sort of we're looking to have Jonathan Taylor have less carries the rest of his career to sort of extend his career. Now, one carry the second half is,
a little bit too less.
That's taking load management to the extreme.
Yeah.
But I just think the rest of the season, I think we're going to see, I don't know what the breakoff's going to be, 18 for Taylor and 10 for Moss. I don't know. But this is not going to be, JT needs a breather, let's put Moss in there for a series. I just don't think that's going to happen. And I wonder how the way this season is progressing plays into that. If the playoffs aren't in the picture, and they still are because the AFC is sort of muddled once you get past the first 3 or 4 teams, maybe they're not going to. Maybe they don't see a value of having Taylor carry 20 times a game for a team that's not going to make the playoffs, and have him fresh next year. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the difference between 20 carries and 15 over the course of a season isn't that much on the wear and tear of a body. I don't know. But I just don't think they're getting away from Moss. He's second in the league in rushing, which is incredible.
Consider he missed a game.
If he plays the opener, first they might win.
Yeah, they might have won.
They might have won it. But he's probably got more yards than McCaffrey does. But I just think they really, really value Moss. And it's not to say they don't value Taylor. They do. I mean, because he is the guy. He's still top 5.
Yeah.
He just is. But I just don't think with the way that Moss is playing that they're going to go 80% Taylor. I just don't. Maybe they'll show me different, but and this is a great week to find out because I'm sure you've got on here. Carolina's run defense is awful. It's like 28 or 29. So, but I'm convinced they're going to go this tag team route unless injury interrupts it.
And that's like they showed before that. They had Nyheim Hines was valuable too, and they gave him plenty of carries, plenty of touches. He's a different back, obviously, than Zach Moss is, but if they have value in 2 running backs, they're going to use it. Like coaches will do that, and
again, Shane Steichen doesn't have history with JT.
True.
I mean, he's still learning how to use him. He's had more hands-on experience with Zach Moss. From the offseason and the first part of the season, so I understand it. So I'm really curious how this thing, because you cannot put this offense in the hands of Gardner Minshew. And if that rubs his family the wrong way, I'm sorry, but he's good when things are on schedule, I guess. And the stat that jumped out at me when I was looking at this was he's 1-10 when he throws 40 passes in a game, not 50, 40. 40 is kind of like a normal load for a quarterback, and it just when he gets out of his comfort zone, I guess, bad things can happen. And boy, when you got a running game, I think the offensive line's playing pretty well. I really do. You know, they give up sacks. Yeah, everybody gives up sacks. But I think by and large they're playing well. Lean on your running game, even if that's 2 guys, and I think that's what they need to do, and that's what they probably will do.
Yeah, that's what the stats would say they should do, certainly this weekend, as the Colts take on the Carolina Panthers. The 1-6 Panthers just got their first win of the season this past week. Frank Reich's first win in Carolina, head coach, very familiar, obviously, to folks here in Indianapolis and plenty of the guys in the locker room, and plenty of intrigue. We'll go somewhere else before we get into this the game preview really for this week. But in the locker room today, speaking with Shaq Leonard is where I'm headed.
Good transition.
Guys. Yes, exactly. It wasn't the best transition,
but
on.
It's important to talk about.
Yes,
and he's also a guy who played for Reich.
Indeed.
There
so
you go.
Now,
there's your segue, right?
Shaq Leonard.
So you knew what you were doing.
I did the entire time. Just Matt finally helped me take it out of the gullet there. But anyway, Shaq Leonard has been all this season obviously working his way up, or allegedly working his way up to a more of a full-time role. But for the first time in the locker room today, he appeared frustrated, very frustrated, and more than just the base level frustration of wanting to be out there and just not being out there. More than that. You can go online to Twitter at DaveG_sports. I tweeted out the exchange that we're about to kind of break down a bit. So if you want to hear it in its entirety there with all the context, it's there for you. But anyway, I asked Shaq, I was like, hey, it's November. November's the month that they said you were supposed to be working toward being full go. Do you think you're there? And he said, to some extent, well, I think I'm there, but they don't think I'm there. They don't think that I'm making enough splash plays. And so my usage will probably be the same or maybe worse. And so that's where we are with Shaq Leonard right now. He is obviously at a point where he is frustrated with how he's being used. He feels like he is ready to go full speed. It's not that he's mad at EJ Speed or at Zaire Franklin. Doesn't give off those vibes to me at all. But he is not happy with how the coaches are using him, and feeling that if he's not making enough splash plays, he should still be sitting out. My thought is, first of all, that he should be out there on third downs because those are the plays that the offense is straining a little bit more, and they're more apt to make mistakes. And if you're going to have Shaq on the field, that's the time to do it. He's shown in the past his penchant for making those types of plays, but it was also in a different type of system. And he talked a little bit about the system too, that he's currently in, and how he's kind of used to funnel action towards Zaire or funnel it toward the safeties. So his role is different than it was under Matt Eberflus a couple years ago. So it's more difficult for him to make those splash plays. Chap, this was as interesting as Shaq has been really all season, and giving us some insight into how he truly feels. And this just something that, like, he says that it's not a mental thing anymore. Like at the beginning, he was like, mental, can I make it back and all that. He's always been very open with his mental, his questions about his ability returning from this very devastating injury that he had. But now it's not a question of mentality for him. Like, he is very confident in himself. He's confident in his ability, that he's feeling good. But the coaches and him are not on the same page right now.
Well, and the coaches determine
exactly
who does what. It's kind of apparent that he sort of has the same feeling that like Kenny Moore had last year, because this is really Shaq's first year in Gus's defense. I mean, last year was just a lost season.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
So I remember Kenny was really Shaq and Kenny were pillars of Eberflus's defense. They were those two, and then Buck in the middle. That triangle that Flus always had, and now it's from a linebacker standpoint, Bradley's defense shines a light on Zaire, and he's thriving in it. So I don't know how this is resolved this year. Gus did mention, well, November is when we kind of targeted, and of course Shaq says, well, I was ready before then, and there's obviously not a meeting in the minds, but. Do they change? The problem with putting like the three linebackers on the field is, one of them is going to be in coverage, and if they lock up a receiver on your linebacker, you're screwed.
Yep,
you're done. So they need extra bodies on the back end. Is the problem? And from a coaching standpoint, it's really like a chicken or egg. They know what EJ Speed. First, Zaire's not coming off the field. It took a twinge in his knee to come off for like 3 plays.
Right.
And then it was what Alubi went in. Mm-hmm. But it's obvious they want E.J. Speed on the field, and he's made plays.
He has.
He just has.
Yep.
But with Shaq, it's like, well, you need to make more splash plays. Well, then put me out in splash play possibilities.
Right.
Now first and second down is more forced fumbles type of thing. Well, third down it's when stuff happens. You know, with tip balls and interceptions. You remember he got the interception last year on a tip ball when he could barely play. So I don't know how this goes. I did look, and we talked about before we started the podcast, is he signed, was it a 5-year, $98 million extension? And next year he counts $20 million against the cap.
That's the final year of his deal. No, it's not the final year.
No, it's got 1 or 2 more years.
2 more years.
It was a 5-year extension, so it was 5. But if you at the very least, I think they try to rework the contract, which in this case probably means take a pay cut.
Right.
Sometimes that doesn't happen, but if you just say, no, it's not going to work, and the worst case scenario for Shaq is they cut him, and the team saves, I believe it's $12 million against the cap, and he counts $8 million against the cap. Teams count gads more than that, and they live with it. So it'll be if it gets to that, Shaq, I said, if it gets to that, it'll be a very awkward discussion, more awkward than, hey, Jonathan, we're not going to give you an extension this year until we did.
Right.
So I don't know. They're not gonna pay $20 million in cap. I think it's $13 million base on a facilitator that funnels things to other players.
Right.
So we'll see, and I wasn't there today, but I heard what you posted, and so that's as open and frustrated as we've seen since maybe last year when things just didn't come together.
Yeah, we've seen him open before and honest, but not like this about his role, about specifically thinking that he's somewhere and the team thinking that he's not.
And this, just to not put words in his mouth, but he's like almost all these players, they're the ultimate competitors. It was like Pitt going off after the Cleveland game.
Yeah.
It comes out as, I want more. I need more. Well, part of it is I can help us win if you let me do more. So it comes off self-serving, but at the same time, these players are wired that I can do more to help us win these close games. I just don't know that that's going to be the case moving forward.
I'm sure that Matt is killing him too, because like I said, that right as we started off this podcast, last 3 weeks the Colts have given up 37, 39, 38 points. He feels like he is healthier than the coaches feel. He feels like he can do more, and he's just sitting on the sideline watching these plays happen and is unable to do anything about them.
And the odd thing about it is last week he had 11 tackles, which I think that was probably his season high.
I think that's most this year, yeah.
And I couldn't tell you that he was in on any plays. And that's very odd for Shaq, what we have seen in the past.
Right. You are correct. Completely.
And that's, but again, I go back to the less playing time. It's not like Zaire's playing bad or E.J. Speed is playing bad.
Nope.
When they go 3 linebackers, sure, but when they go to 2, they just believe with their eyes, the coaching staff, that their 2 best options are the 2 guys on the field. And it's just too bad that Shaq can't play corner.
I was just going to say the same thing, Chap.
It's a positional thing. And talking to Stephen Holder the other day, he stuck around and talked to Shaq for something. Shaq's playing at about 215, 212. That's incredible.
That's really light for a linebacker.
That's almost safety-ish.
Yeah.
Big safety-ish. But it's interesting.
Not LaRon Landry safety-ish. That's like 230.
Sorry, hawkish.
I couldn't resist.
All of a sudden, that picture's in my mind now. And so thanks a lot. But yeah, it's just a really strange dynamic to where they're getting really good play from the top 2 linebackers, and I have to agree that the 11 tackles, I thought, no, really.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's not him. That's never. There are times he had 15, 16. Thought, yeah, boy, is this play here, that play there, and I think he's got 2 tackles for losses, I think, on this year. I don't know if that team considers those splash plays. I guess. I don't know. Normally it's a takeaway type of thing, but this is going to be interesting. This is 2 weeks in a row we've had a player not happy with their role.
Right.
One was game specific and one is season specific, mid-season specific. So this bears monitoring.
Yep, and we will monitor as the season goes
That's what
along.
we do. We monitor.
Exactly. You got 2 weeks until the bye. Bye, if you're right now, bye can't come soon enough. But still 2 important games until the bye. The first one will be the Carolina Panthers this weekend in Charlotte, a 4 o'clock kickoff. Wow, how about
4:05.
that? Yeah.
Not prime time,
Yeah.
but this is about as good as it gets.
Exactly. Colts are last place in the AFC South, and the Panthers are the last place in the NFC South. The battle of the cellar dwellers in the Southern divisions. Panthers got their first win of the season, though, last week, taking on the Houston Texans. So, at least the Colts don't have that to check off their list. That's a good thing. The last meeting between the Colts and Panthers came back in 2019, 4 years ago, when Jacoby Brissett led the Colts to a blowout of Carolina, 38-6.
Was that the Nyheim Hines game?
It was. The Nyheim Hines punt return game. Is the last game of the regular season there that they got. 2 punt returns. Marlon Mack and Jordan Wilkins each rushed for 80 yards or more. How about that?
I don't think Jacoby cracked 120 yards passing either.
Probably didn't. Probably
Didn't need
shouldn't
to.
have. Exactly. Give it to the big boys behind the line and let them run. Carolina, though, is 5-2 all time in this series. Although both the Colts wins in this series have been blowouts. So joined by that one in 2019. Back in 2007, they won 31-7. So if we look at the tail of the tape between these two teams, Panthers are only scoring 18 points per game. That's 25th in the NFL. Colts still up at 6th in the league with 25.6 points per game. You can say this. They're scoring points, even if they're giving up points.
Only team with 8 games.
Yep.
Only team with at least 20 in every game.
It's pretty good.
That's the thing, and I'm obsessed, as you guys know, with the big plays. The Colts.
Yes.
Are they top 5? They're like top 5 in the league.
They are. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me because it tells me that while they have definitely struggled, there have been some clock management stuff and things like that, and some Jonathan Taylor usage stuff. Steichen, offensively, man, he's got a really sharp mind.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And it goes to show you, I think, over this recent stretch of 3 losses, how important turnovers are in a game. You can be one of the best offenses in the NFL, but if you turn the ball over, you are in trouble, man. You are in big, big trouble. And number 2, from this, I forget what number 2 is, so we're just going to go with number 1.
But again, with the turnovers, I mean, the Eagles, one of their losses this year, have they lost twice?
To the Jets? No, there's only once.
4 turnovers.
Yep.
So it's just this is like duh, So that's why I say don't put too much on the quarterback. Take care of the ball, because all the things they've done on offense, it sort of reaffirms what everybody was saying about Steichen is that he's going to be a very brilliant offensive mind. Mm-hmm. Now, I think he's, like you said, he's got some learning on the job to do with game management, and he'd be the first to admit that. That's every coach. Some of the veteran coaches have issues, but they've done this with a change at quarterback, with their right tackle probably going to miss his 4th game, with Jonathan Taylor not here for a month. In all of this, and with Josh Downs sort of being a rookie learning on the run, so it's very, very impressive and encouraging. That's what's so frustrating is that the complementary defense, because special teams have been pretty good. I mean, I've got the returns have been in, and there have been a couple of leaks on returns, but Matt Gay's been good, very good, but to me, very few issues with the offense. Again, Bernard Ryman missed 2 games with the concussion, I think it was. So, yeah, not a lot of issues there. But gosh darn, get the defense fixed.
Yeah, the Colts are 9th in rushing yards per game on offense, 13th in passing yards per game on offense. So in the top half of the
surprises
league.
me.
Yeah,
the passing yards.
Yeah. Well, they've gotten some mop-up time, and Gardner gets 300 yards.
He had a couple of back-to-back 300-yard games.
Because he's throwing 45 times a game. Yeah, exactly. So if you...
One game he threw 51.
Yeah, crack enough eggs, you'll get an omelet, so to speak. The Panthers are 24th in the NFL in both passing yards and rushing yards, in fact. down at 90 yards rushing per game, less than 200 yards passing per game, 194 sitting at there. Points allowed on defense, the Panthers are giving up 28.4. The Colts are giving up 28.6. So,
sounds like an over bet to me.
Darn right. Take the over. Colts are dead last in the league.
That means
in
this
points
is a
allowed
9-6 game.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
Like a Cleveland game,
yeah,
right?
That's what we're all expecting. Yeah. So that don't bet based on our information, or at least don't complain to us afterwards when you lose, because you assuredly will. Let's see. Total defensive yards. Panthers are 12th in the league. Colts are 28th. They're giving up quite a few yards to their opponents. Passing defense, the Panthers are among the league's best. Only 6th in the NFL in passing yards per game, but it's probably because other teams
People just say, everyone's going to run it today.
run against them. They are 29th in the league, third to last in rushing yards given up per game, with nearly 140 rushing yards per game. That is a whole lot on the ground, allowing 4.7 yards per carry, too. That is a whole lot per carry. Colts are 25th in the league in pass defense, 23rd in the league in rush defense, but only giving up 3.9 yards per carry. So that's a decent number, at least, if you're hovering around 4 there. Turnovers, Panthers are -2 in the turnover margin on the season, and the Colts are also -2 on turnover margin for the season. So very similar in those two veins. When you talk about the Panthers, you talk about Bryce Young, the #1 overall pick, went to Carolina this year and has not looked great so far throughout this first half of his first NFL season. To be fair, he doesn't have a lot of weapons around him to do anything with.
You got Adam Thielen and what?
And who? And a whole lot of nobody else. He's been sacked 22 times in his games. Backup Andy Dalton started week 3 for them, so there's one game that he didn't play. But 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions for Bryce Young this year. He's completing 64% of his passes, which is
It's right there. It's like, okay. Yeah.
It's like, whatever. And thrown for 1,200 yards. So Bryce Young is a guy that there's questions about him coming into the league, about his size, about his durability.
Hasn't got any bigger, has he?
What?
Hasn't got any, he's still the same size, right?
He's still the same size.
Okay.
Has not grown an inch. Has not gained significant poundage, at least.
I thought it was crazy at the combine. The big thing is he spent like a month putting on weight. He wasn't any taller, but he was heavier, so he could handle the pounding. And I'm sure it was weight they put on, and then he took it off when the combine was over.
Came right off. Exactly. That's the problem. If you're not,
if that's not your playing weight, it's a big deal.
You can lift and bulk all you want in the offseason. Once you get to playing football every week, you're not gonna stay it that way. It's just not gonna happen. At running back, it's a couple of different players that have been carrying the rock. Chuba Hubbard has 69 carries. That's the most out of any player, 270 yards. Also 14 catches, 85 yards. Miles Sanders, they signed him from...
I'd forgotten that.
Right?
From Philly.
From Philly.
And he's not had a real great season for them at all.
Had a bad season, in fact, only averaging 3 yards per carry. And he does have 15 more catches for 81 yards, too. But you with the money that they paid him, I think it was like $7 million a year they paid him, you would expect a whole lot more out of him. And that's why Philly, the stat this offseason was Philly signed like 3 or 4 different running backs for less than that $7 million. And now that's why they did that, because they got DeAndre Swift, who's doing really well for them.
Unless you've got a guy, a running back that's really good.
Yep.
You just go by with what you can get.
And the Panthers were hoping that Miles Sanders could take the next step, being like completely set free by himself, being the main guy. But they even saw that he can't be the main guy, and Chuba Hubbard has more carries than him so far this year. Alongside Adam Thielen, who has 57 catches, by far and away the most on the team.
Pitt got 50? Pitt's got 50.
Right around that range, yeah. DJ Chark has 15 catches. Jonathan Mingo has 19 catches. They have tight ends Hayden Hurst and Tommy Tremble there. They have 17 explosive plays, as Matt points out here, as to the 39 by the Colts. So this is not an explosive offense by any stretch of the imagination.
Until Sunday.
Yeah, right. Until Sunday. That's how you think of it, Matt. Good job. This is a coming out party.
If this defense gives up 30 again.
To Bryce Young.
Exactly. So, again, we go back to the same things. Just take care of your business. I don't care if it's ugly or whatever, but these are games, even with where you are, you should win.
Yeah.
You need to win.
So
I'm as frustrated as Shaq is.
We get that, and I don't know about that because he's pretty daggum frustrated. But
but he goes home to $20 million a year. I don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you know that he's got that parachute to glide home on.
Right. It's a nice soft landing for him once he gets home. For you, you're out laying mulch.
I'm going today and I'm mulching the yard. So good Lord.
Let's see here. More notes that we have. Panthers defense. Leading tacklers. Frankie Louvu has 51 tackles on the year. He's their leading tackler. Their defensive tackle, Derek Brown, second most with 35. C.J. Henderson in corner has 34 as well. Brian Burns as a rush linebacker is a pretty good player. Only has 5 sacks this year, which is, I mean, it's not bad. You're halfway through.
There was talk they were going to move him, or there was interest in teams to take him from them since they're going nowhere.
Exactly. There was some thought, but that did not happen. Brian Burns has been a 10-plus sack a year guy over the past couple years for Carolina, and he's on pace for that again, but has not been dynamic, crazy dynamic at least in that sense. We'll see if the Panthers put him on the right side of the Colts offensive line and try to test him against Blake Freeland, because it appears Blake Freeland might be the offensive tackle at right tackle for the Colts again this week, because Braden Smith is still not practicing with his hip and wrist injuries. So
this will be 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Yeah, I think it might be 4. It's at least 3. But you're getting to that point. I was thinking this week about
IR.
Yeah,
exactly.
why didn't they put him on IR?
Exactly. So if it comes to this point, that means the injury is lingering obviously longer than the team thought.
If they thought it was going to be 4 weeks, he'd have been on IR.
Right.
So
Totally.
let's point that out. So yes, it's and we don't know whether it's the hip or the wrist.
Right. They keep putting both.
Right. So we don't know which one. Maybe it's both. But that's why we've sort of, again, he didn't practice today. The guys who were at watching practice, Kevin Bowen and Joel and those guys. Braden didn't practice. Juju didn't practice. Zaire's not practicing. He's got that knee that
Taking it easy.
He'll play.
I think he'll play.
Unless you see Bone, he'll play. The one I want to see that I haven't seen yet is whether Kylan Granson practices.
Right.
He would have been full yesterday. Wasn't yesterday a walkthrough?
Yes.
If we had to practice this guy, so that's important that he's full again, so you can pass through protocol. So they're sort of no, I was wrong. They're not sort of healthy because you're missing your starting corner and you're starting
starting quarterback. You're starting quarterback.
He's in my past mind.
Right. You're starting right tackle.
But you're right tackle. Yeah, that's significant. Yeah. So, but still, I think Blake Freeland's played better. Mm-hmm. He's settling in. He still needs to be your swing tackle. Yeah. He just does.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he's not going to replace either of the two guys you have out there.
No. I think Bernie's kind of really.
He's doing pretty well.
He's doing pretty well. I mean, because again, these guys get beat. It's just crazy when sometimes we fans are so critical. Well, they didn't do as well. Look around the league.
Yeah,
there are some bad offensive lines and bad offensive linemen. So, but I think they've been able to plug in well enough to where they're still at to where they can win these games if they just quit doing dumb things.
Well, the Panthers had quite the lengthy injury report on Wednesday as it came out, who did not practice. 14 players. Wide receiver DJ Chark, Justin Houston. Our boy Justin Houston with the hamstring injury, always a threat to record a safety week in and week out. Tight end Hayden Hurst, wide receiver Adam Thielen was just a rest day on Wednesday. They need him to rest because they keep throwing him to the ball every play on Sundays. So he needs to take an extra day there in the middle of the week. So yeah. There we go. Notables listed as limited includes safety Von Bell. He's missed the last 2 games, but he's among the top tacklers for Carolina. Yep. Also linebackers Frankie Louvu and Brian Burns listed as limited.
Say the Panthers website just said Bell had returned to practice this week, so it sounds like they expect him to play, and they would really like to have him back because he's one of their better defensive players.
You can follow us all on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone for news and notes throughout the week, including injury updates from both the Colts and the Panthers as we near game time, which will be a 1 o'clock kickoff in the Indianapolis market broadcast on CBS 4.
405.
What's that? 405. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, we said that
right.
earlier.
Yeah.
You can tune in at 1, exactly. But you'll have a 3-hour wait.
Another one there first. Yeah, exactly.
I would have been right out there with you guys. Just
ready to go.
Brain freeze.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, let's get to our scores and predictions.
First of all, we were going down that line and we got distracted as we normally do. We got Frank Reich again.
Oh, yeah, shoot.
And
I pivoted away from that as I got to Shaq.
Off the top of my head, I think is this just the second time they faced a former coach?
They've definitely faced Jim Caldwell with the Lions.
That's the one I can think
That's
of.
the one I'm thinking of, yeah.
And
Well, they would have faced Mark Jabrota.
in Baltimore, yes.
Baltimore.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That's on top of my head is sometimes it's fuzzy up there.
That's been a couple decades,
Right.
though.
So and again, he bore the brunt of all the angst last year for whatever the reasons, and some of it was out of his hands. But one of the all-time good guys, all time.
Yep.
And I thought people really got on him for play calling and all that. And I thought, when you got that offensive line like that, what are you supposed to call?
Yeah.
A punt on first down? So, but
Might have been prettier.
yeah, well, that's without question. And we talked to 4 or 5 players in the locker room. I'm telling you, those guys were Frank Reich guys. Mm-hmm. They were, whether it was DeForest, whether it was Zaire, Ryan Kelly.
Big one, Ryan
He
Kelly.
talked about how he helped me through my tough times with his personal issues.
Right.
So we tried to get Frank on a Zoom call this week, and I think he declined. I think, and he probably should have, because I don't know how he would have answered the questions we would have asked about what the heck happened last year.
Right.
So I totally understand it, but again, he's one of I've known him since the 2000s, the Manning years when he was here. But I did text him. I said, "Congratulations on the win," but not this week, and he understands. So you hope the best for him, because I think there is getting to be a little heat in Carolina. I do.
Yep. I think that's fair.
And which is odd, because you just hired a guy.
Right.
But whether or not it was his choice at quarterback, I don't know, whatever it is, but it's going to be an impatient owner, I think. So I hope he has success every week except like this week.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He was nothing but a joy to deal with, from our perspective.
Just decent. He knew we had a job to do, and for the most part, and there are things he wouldn't tell you or whatever, couldn't or wouldn't, but generally he would give you a very thoughtful answer about whatever you ask him.
Mm-hmm. And that's not often what Shane Steichen does. Like, no disrespect to Shane.
Different guys, but exactly right.
Yes, not the deep and thoughtful and eloquent answer. It's the
All
short.
ball.
Exactly. Yeah. If it's not the NFL, if it's not football, he's not that interested in speaking about it.
Well, and sometimes when it is about the NFL, he's not
interested in speaking about it either. Now we will get to our predictions for the week. Thank you, Chap, for bringing that back in and mentioning Frank before we wrap things up here on the Colts Blue Zone podcast. The Colts are small favorites. In fact, visiting Carolina, a -2 favorite, over under at 44. So they're expecting something along the lines of a 23-21 ball game there in Carolina.
God, let's not have it that close. I don't want to get into your prediction.
Right.
But let's not have a nail biter.
No, that'd be great. How about Chap? You go first, Matt goes second, and I'll wrap things up for us.
I've got 24-16. Good guys. This offense does sort of enough, but if this defense gives up anywhere close to what's been giving up, shame on them. The Panthers, it's sometimes it's a small sample size. No, it's not. It's almost half the season, and they've not gotten things right. The quarterback, any rookie quarterback, you want to get in his face. I hope this pass rush can find a way to do that. Don't let this rookie who has struggled and this offense who has struggled do damage, and then don't turn the ball over 2 or 3 times in 24-16.
Yeah, all those things seem pretty simple. Just don't do this,
I'll go out and find me a bookie and put money down.
There you go. Perfect. Matt, what do you think?
The Colts have been marginally better on the road this year. 2 of their wins have come on the road.
1-4 at home.
And they've not been great at home. So I'm going to pick them. I'm going to go 34-24 in this one.
24, okay. I like that too. Both defenses giving up a lot of points this year. Matt sees that continuing to happen. I definitely am taking the Colts this week. There's no reason for me to take the Panthers right now. I mean, they beat the Texans last week, but based on the whole body of work, there's no reason to pick the Panthers.
There's no reason to say this is a week they're going to get alive, even though this Colts defense has been awful.
Right. I will say I am glad that the Panthers are not going into this game 0-7.
Exactly.
Yeah, because They got off the schneid. They got their win, so it's not that target on the Colts' back this week.
So we bet in. What's your score?
I'm going with 27-13 Colts this week. I think that they can handle things. I definitely think they're over 20 points again against this defense, and I think the Colts defense itself gets a little bit. It could be 27-17, but we'll go.
How do you think the running back then goes?
I think Jonathan Taylor rushes for the 100 yards for the first time this year. He's got to get the ball.
I still cannot believe that he didn't crack 100 yards last week.
After being at 80 after one. That's what I was thinking. I was starting to think of that old stat that we had, the Jonathan Taylor 100 yards equals a win, basically, until it didn't. But just what it would have been, like 10-1 or 13-1, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden it was a completely irrelevant stat as I was sitting there in the press box because he just never touched the ball again.
There's no stat about what are they when he rushes for 95. Nobody cares.
Or 82 yards in the first quarter. They're 0-1 when he rushes for exactly 82
I'll bet they're pretty good when he rushes for 82 yards in the first quarter.
Yeah, right? Seriously, if he gets that much.
Well, although they'd be 0-1 off the top of my head.
Specifically, yeah. So maybe not as good as you would think. But we appreciate you listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. Please subscribe. Get us delivered to your podcast listening device as soon as it drops every week. We will see you after the Colts take on the Panthers this weekend. And have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy some football, and see you next week.